Good evening. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for Royal Neighbors Foundation's second webinar titled Love and Money, A Guide to Guiding Finances. I am Sarah Reemsma with the Royal Neighbors Foundation. Before we get started, I wanted to point out some functionality of the webinar to keep it fun. You'll notice some of you are joining us by phone, but if you are joining us online, you'll see a chat box at the left of your screen. Feel free. I know a lot of you have started to take advantage of that and saying hello, which is great to see. But also use that feature if you have any questions throughout the webinar. We will be monitoring that throughout and make sure that your questions are answered. Also are going to have a few polls. Why don't we go ahead and do one right now just to make sure everyone's comfortable with the functionality. And we're going to, first off, how many are in your group, because some of you are watching it as a group with some friends, so we want to get kind of an idea of how many of you are out there. So it'll come up. Is it just you, 2 or 3, 4 to 5, 6 to 10, or over 10 in your group? Go ahead and select that. What are we doing? Okay, great. Thanks for participating. Let's go ahead and get started. I would love to introduce Kristen McDaniel. She is our Vice President of the Royal Neighbors Foundation. She is joining our presenter, Certified Financial Planner Lauren Lyons Cole from New York this evening, and I'm going to turn it over to Kristen.
Welcome everyone to our webinar this evening. So excited for us to talk about a very interesting topic, love and money. Our Certified Financial Planner, Lauren Lyons Cole, is going to talk about how to juggle relationships and money. This is brought to you by the Royal Neighbors Foundation. The foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that's dedicated to providing women with financial education and improving their futures. So I'd like to introduce our speaker, Lauren Lyons Cole. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Thanks for having me, Kristen, and for joining us here today. It's so great that technology allows us to all connect across the country. We're really excited. It's also nice to have Kristen right next to me. So thank you for the nice introduction, and thank you to everyone who's joining us today. We have a big group, which is awesome. I'm going to do my best to keep this high energy and entertaining, because I know that talking about money after a long day at work is not necessarily the easiest thing for everyone to do, but hopefully you come away from this webinar with some really good takeaways that you can put into practice in your life. And I want to say a special shout out to CJ Byers, because I know you had a question about logging into the webinar, so I can see that you got on perfectly fine, so good job. I'm glad that you're here. And welcome to everyone else. Thanks for joining us. So let's get into talking about love and money. So the main things that we're going to go about talking about today are how to effectively communicate about money with your significant other, how to manage joint accounts, and how to juggle financial responsibilities together. So these are our topics for today, and it's a lot to cover, so try to stay with me. And before we actually get started, we're going to throw up another one of those polls that Sarah put up before, so hopefully you've practiced and you're prepared for another one. So I just want to ask a question. I want to know how many people that are joining us today have ever had an argument with their significant other about money. So easy question, yes or no. Have you ever had an argument about money with your significant other? Oh, it looks like we've got a few, a handful, small handful of people joining us tonight that are actually doing pretty good, have not had an argument about money with their significant other, but the vast majority of people have, and that's obviously very normal because money is a hard topic to talk about, and especially there's a lot of emotions that get involved. So when you've got a person that you love and that you have a lot of emotions with, and then you're talking about money, which is another topic that is very emotional, it's pretty likely that that's going to end up with a bit of conflict, shall we say, from time to time. So some of my tips for how to go about talking about money with your significant other in a better way. The first thing that I really recommend is to schedule a money date with your spouse or significant other. Now, the reason for this is that spur-of-the-moment conversations rarely go well. And perhaps some of you who have had arguments about money can relate to this. Perhaps the credit card statement arrives and maybe there's like a few surprise charges and one of you is upset about that and one of you is the culprit, and that can lead to an argument. But if you've scheduled specific times during maybe once a week, maybe once a month, for the two of you to sit down and specifically talk about money things that are going on in your life, that's the best way to approach conversations about money. Premeditated, sit-down money dates. Now, I recommend doing this at a time when the kids have gone to bed or you have some quiet time to yourself. You want to make this setting as low stress as possible because the conversation is probably usually going to be a little bit hard. So arrange it, over dinner. Maybe leave alcohol out of it just to be safe, and sit down and just really try to communicate very effectively. You can each have a list of things that you want to bring up. Maybe when you're first starting out, once a week might actually be a good amount of time for it. And as you get more comfortable talking about money, you could move that down to once a month. So scheduling a money date with your spouse, very helpful. And also, just for the record, that means no spur-of-the-moment conversations about money. If something comes up during the week that's outside of your money date, one of you gets the right to say, put it on the table, we'll talk about it at our money date. We're not talking about it now. Okay, so another thing to think about when you're talking about money, again, it's really emotional. It can be very hard to talk about. So obviously, you want to start off slow when you're talking about money with your significant other. Now, a great way to get started is to get on the same page about something exciting. So thinking about some sort of future goal, whether it's where you'd like to retire one day or where you'd like to take a trip or maybe just what sort of renovations you'd like to do to the kitchen, some sort of shared goal that you can talk about just in an abstract, fun way. I mean, you love this person. Clearly, you've gotten into a relationship because you have things in common. So focusing on those things that you have in common is a great way to get on the same page about money. And then from there, you can go backwards and you can start to work towards those goals together, which of course requires looking at the specifics of your current situation and understanding the actual math and the numbers about where you're at financially right now and what steps you can take to achieve those goals. But sometimes it's good to have a little bit of a warm-up before you get to those conversations. So talking about things that that would be really exciting. Those are fun money conversations. That's where you really want to start when you're having these sorts of talks with your significant other. Okay, so speaking about the numbers and the math and the actual real situation with your money, it's really important to separate out the math and the emotions. So when it comes to budgeting, it's important. You've got to agree to be realistic and you've got to be firm, you've got to stick to a budget. But feelings are inevitably going to come up. That's just part of the situation with money. It's really common. I mean, if you just even spend 5 minutes thinking back on your childhood and how you interacted with money or didn't even know anything about money with your parents growing up, there's a lot power and love is tied to money, so many different feelings. And even though men may be less likely to talk about those feelings, they have them too. So when it comes to money, there's so many emotions involved, and it's a neat opportunity, actually, if you can step out of the stress of the moment. It's a neat opportunity to bond with each other over the experiences you had growing up, and it kind of, it's a reason to talk about those things like, if you were in a situation where you had to work for everything and you had to pay your way through college and buy your own car and you really had to struggle, and maybe you're really proud of that, and perhaps your significant other had the opposite situation and received a lot of help from their parents, or all of these things. It's an opportunity to talk through what's kind of made us who we are, and it's good to be proud of your unique money personality, but it's really important to approach those conversations in an open and non-judgmental way. So if you've got a significant other who's a big spender, or if you're the big spender, it's really important not to focus on that, but to try to understand what's behind that. And then when you're actually talking about budgeting, at that point, the emotions should be gone. It should be, okay, this is our income, these are our expenses, these are our goals, and you can break it down to super easy subtraction and addition. So keep the two conversations separate. Okay, so lastly, when you're talking about money with your significant other, if it's really tense, and listen, a lot of divorces happen because of money. So this is a serious topic. It's hard for everybody, I guarantee you. Money is never an easy topic. I can just say from experience, all the clients I talk to, it's not something that just comes naturally, okay? So everyone's working hard at this. And if you find you're in a situation where the stress is just through the roof, or you're just on opposite ends of the spectrum and the tension is really just too much, don't be afraid to seek out a third party. Now, this third party should be completely neutral. I'm not talking about going to another family member and having them get involved. That would be a bad idea. But if you have someone like a marriage and family therapist or a minister in your church or a certified financial planner, some third outside party who's totally neutral, who can just help, mediate a little bit between the two of you. And I've done this so often with my clients, where you have two people coming in who love each other so much, but also feel very strongly that they are right when it comes to money. And every time what I find is that one of them is 50% right, and one of them is 50% right too. And especially because you are a team. So it's a matter of finding the perfect balance for the two of you together. So don't be afraid to seek out a third party. I mean, really, it can make a huge impact very quickly and just set you up. Maybe if you've had a bad history so far talking about money, it can change everything. You can do a total 180 and start moving forward in a much more positive way, which is really, I mean, that's what you need to be able to do. You don't want to be in a position of stress when it comes to money. Okay, so once you've figured out how to talk about money, the next step is, of course, managing joint accounts, which is tricky. I mean, it's depending on who you are and what your situation is, there's no right answer when it comes to managing joint accounts. Now, I've got some strategies that I found worked, and we'll walk through that here now. But before I get to that, I'm curious how many people listening in are managing their joint accounts together, 100% just sharing everything, dumping it all into the same place, or how many people are keeping their money completely separate, and how many people are doing like a little bit of both. And I bet it's going to be pretty evenly split. It's funny, that's how it's coming in right now, so I'll give you guys a second to vote. Yeah, wow, it is pretty even. That is so interesting. And actually, we've got quite a few people who are keeping their money separate. Okay, I'm going to close the voting now. Wow, okay, so this is going to be this is really interesting. I wish that everyone could turn on their cameras and I could like talk to everybody at once and hear and understand why you're doing it the way that you're doing it. But when it comes to managing joint accounts, there's a few different ways to go about thinking about this. Now, I'm going to start with talking about what each of you need as individuals, because there are certain things that no matter if you're in a relationship, you absolutely have to have in your own name, no questions asked. So for those of you who are sharing everything, you may be, well, actually for everyone listening, some of these might be things that you need to add to your financial folder. So number one, everybody has to have their own credit card, without question. It's really important that you establish your own credit history. Now, if your partner has a credit card and has given you a credit card as an authorized user on their account, that's good, it's helpful, but your credit history is uniquely yours. So you need to have a credit card that is tied to your name and your name only. The credit card that's tied to your partner's name will help your credit a little bit, but it's very important that you have your own credit card. So that's something non-negotiable. You've got to have it. You don't necessarily have to use it. I mean, you could open a credit card and keep it at home or whatever, but establishing your own credit history is very important, especially as women, because at some point in our lives, most of us are going to be on our own with our finances. So making sure that we're setting ourselves up to be independent, should we ever have to be, is very important for both of us, both sides. The other thing that you have to have in your own name is a retirement account. And the reason for this is, although you can share a checking account or a savings account and have two names on that, even a mortgage, home ownership, a lot of things can be joint, retirement accounts are separate. It's just the way that it works for taxes. They are absolutely individual. So if your spouse is the one who's the primary earner, and if that person is, stocking away money in a 401k, you need to have something as well. And it's just part of your overall financial planning as a couple. It's not about having separate money because you'll both use it when it comes time to retirement. It's just that you need to make sure that there is something in your name just in case. So another important thing to mention is if one of the partners is not working, if you're a stay-at-home spouse, there's something called a spousal IRA that you can open. So, take a note, spousal IRA, go Google it after this is over and open one if you don't already have one. You can have an IRA in your own name even if you're not earning income. So that's an important thing to consider. Now, if you're both working, make sure that you're equally contributing to your retirement account. You don't want to have one partner solely focused on that and the other partner not. It needs to be a joint effort. And again, it's an individual name. Now, and if you're married, you will be the beneficiaries on each other's accounts, which is good. You don't have a choice, but that's good. So that's the way that will work, but make sure that you look into your beneficiaries as well. The third thing that everybody has to have, if they're talking about joint money with another partner, non-negotiable, you have to have a certain amount of me money. This is money that I say you can do whatever you want with it and your partner has no right to butt in. So depending on your resources, that could be small. It might be $20 a week. It could be $200 a week. Whatever is right for your earning situation, even if it's $5, you literally have got to have something that is just yours, that no questions asked, you can spend or save for whatever you want. So like in my situation right now, my partner just wanted to buy a really nice bike. So he saved up his individual money and he's spending that. And I don't, even though I don't ride a bike, I don't really understand bikes, but that makes him happy and good. He has every right to spend his money on that bike if that's what he wants to do. And I get to spend my money the way I want to spend it. And we of course have joint expenses as well and joint things joint responsibilities that we're taking care of, but it's so important to have something that is yours. And again, if you're in a situation where you have one earner and one stay-at-home spouse, this becomes even more important, and it can be a hard conversation to have because I really think that the me money, this amount, should be equal for both partners. So no matter how much either person is earning, you should each get the same amount of free money. And so again, that conversation can be hard to have sometimes perhaps, but just have them rewatch this webinar. When we repost it, we'll post the recording, tell them to watch it, so then I can be the one telling them, you need to have equal me money and no questions asked, it can be spent. Again, all, with the disclaimer that this is within your budget. So that might be as little as $5 a week, but whatever it is, you need to have something that is just yours. Okay, but now when it comes to actually the joint side of joint finances, once we've established the independent things that you absolutely have to have, even if you're in a relationship. When it comes to actually managing the ins and outs of your relationship, I've found, and there's a lot of different ways. Obviously, you guys are all using different approaches, so there's a lot of things that work. This is what works for me, and this is what I do with a lot of clients. So this is my approach, and you can always, with personal finance, it's so personal. Feel free to take or leave whatever works for you and adapt it as needed. But I think that it's important to have a checking account that is shared with both names on it that you can use for paying bills, joint bills like your rent or mortgage, your car insurance, the family cell phone plan, the cable bill, those things that are like family expenses that everyone's benefiting from. There's something nice about having a checking account with both of your names on it. It's also just convenient. Like if one person's out of town, the other person can easily take care of the bill paying. If you need to go get something from the bank, it just makes things easier. Now, if you have any sort of trust issues or if there's like, split families, there can be times where sharing accounts really doesn't make sense. But for most people, having a joint account to keep track of paying the family expenses just streamlines things, really. It makes it a lot easier and more straightforward. Similarly, I think it's good to have a credit card that is designated as a joint expense credit card. So this will be in one person's name, but the other person can be an authorized user. Each of you should carry it in your wallet. And whenever something comes up that's a family expense, so, putting gas in the car, buying groceries, buying toilet paper, or whatever you have to do, for the family, that should go onto that credit card. And I really like this idea because it allows for separation of joint expenditures from those things that you might be spending your me money on. So you might have an individual credit card that you're still using, but having a joint credit card, it's a tool basically for tracking all of your joint expenses. I think that really makes life easier. And again, you can use your checking account for joint expenses to pay the credit card balance, which of course should be paid in full at the end of every month. So make sure that you're only spending on the credit card what you can afford to write a check for out of your checking account at the end of the month or whenever the bill is due. The last thing that you should absolutely share when it comes to your joint finances is decision-making responsibilities. So this might be obvious if you're doing something like buying a house or buying a car, something that's like expensive. But I think that even with smaller purchases, it's really important to talk to them with your spouse and just get both people on board. And also, the other reason that this is really an important approach is that a lot of times, in my experience, opposites attract. That means that you usually have one partner who's a little bit more willing to spend and one partner who's a little bit more willing to save. And if you have conversations, these money dates, remember, on a regular basis, where you can talk about money, you can bring up decisions like what sports camps should we send the kids to, or what should be our back-to-school shopping budget, or should we buy a new gas grill? It's summertime and they're on sale. You know, these sorts of smaller conversations are really a good way to start building your financial relationship together. And inevitably, you're both going to have different opinions, which sometimes can lead to conflict. But as you get better at talking through these things together, chances are your quality of life overall will improve by making these decisions together. So you'll probably end up saving a little bit more and also spending a little bit more, you know, meeting somewhere in the middle between what you would do if you were just by yourself. So I really believe strongly that even small decisions should be made together, and, you know, just as a way of bonding and establishing that you're on the same team. Now, when it comes to managing joint accounts, another thing that I should probably mention is that it's good to have somebody who's the point person. So even though you're having these money dates and you're sharing decision-making responsibilities, it's probably okay for one person to take the lead. But it's not okay for one person to do everything and completely overlook the other person. Even if the other person doesn't like dealing with the money, you've got to sort of bounce back and forth with each other and do a bit of buy-in, you know, get both people on board and thinking about it, even if one person is the one who ultimately is writing most of the checks or dealing with sort of the administrative functions of managing the finances, which, by the way, 75% of women are the ones who do that. So women tend to be very good at being the household CFO. I certainly manage that role, so it's something I relate to. A few other things when it comes to managing joint accounts to consider to make your life a little easier. I'm all about simplifying and streamlining so that things just move smoothly and you barely have to think about your money. I think that is the best way to approach it. If you may or may not have heard of a website called mint.com. You might be familiar with Quicken. Quicken is another example, or even using an Excel spreadsheet. Some way to track your spending on a monthly basis. Now, I personally like mint.com because you can link in your accounts. It's totally bank level security, very safe. You can link in your accounts and it tracks every sort of, you know, time you go to Starbucks or whenever you pay your rent. All of those things are automatically tracked for you. So you know, you have a good sense of the ins and outs of your finances. Now, I have one for my individual accounts, but we also have a separate one for our joint accounts. And that's where I link our joint checking and our shared credit cards for expenses. And actually, you could have a joint savings account or whatever else also linked there. So that is a really good way to keep track of, you know, how much are we spending on groceries, or are we, this is a big one actually, how much are we spending at Target without thinking, you know, that where you go to Target and suddenly you come out with $100 and you're like, I didn't even need anything. Why did I just spend $100? So having a centralized location to be able to keep track of that, and where both of you can log in, you can do it together during your money dates, and review your spending. There's a nice little tab. You can click on the Trends tab, and it'll pull up these beautiful graphs about how you've allocated your joint money for the month or for the past 3 months. So that's a really great way. In fact, it makes a really easy focus for your money dates. And again, helps you to get on the same page so that you can move towards those goals together that you've talked about. Another thing to consider is contributing proportionally to your joint expenses. I think, in some cases, people might just split joint expense, especially if you keep everything separate. It could be that you're, just each paying 50-50 on whatever bills come up, or maybe one person handles the groceries and someone else handles, the cable bill. It's really nice to actually be able to see a full picture of how much you're spending and then have a good idea of what each person's income is and then contribute accordingly. So for example, if your joint expenses are $3,000 a month, and if you have one partner who's earning $60,000 and one partner is earning $30,000, then the $60,000 earner should contribute $2,000 a month to your joint expenses, and the $30,000 earner can contribute $1,000 a month. So that way you're meeting your bills, you've got full $3,000 to cover your joint expenses, but you're contributing proportionately based on what you can both afford to do. Now you could also decide to split it up differently. The $60,000 earner could pay $2,500 and the $30,000 could pay $500, and that might allow each of you to contribute equally to your retirement accounts. So, play around with the numbers. It takes a bit of trial and error. It certainly takes a little bit of time before you can find something that works perfectly for you. I usually tell people it takes about 3 months. So if you try something and it doesn't work, try something different and keep going until you're like, eureka, this is perfect. We've learned how to manage our joint finances. And also remember to stay open-minded to the fact that over the course of your relationship and as your family changes and your life changes, it's possible that your financial approach is going to need to change too. So don't be a stickler with your finances. Be willing to, they're fluid. So, stay up to date with the evolution of them as they change over the course of your lifetime. Okay, and again, I just want to emphasize that if one spouse is a stay-at-home earner with, taking care of the children or whatever, and they're not working, they still need their own credit card, their own retirement account, and their own me money for personal spending. So this needs to be built into the joint expense budget if that's the situation. So just a little reminder to emphasize that. Okay, so moving on to juggling responsibilities, because once you've sort of figured out how to manage the ins and outs of your day-to-day finances, you have to move on to figuring out how can you actually, achieve balance with all of the different, things that are pulling you in different directions, whether it's saving for retirement, saving for college, trying to take a family vacation. There's so many different things that, you might need to be juggling. And having two people definitely makes it a little bit, more challenging. So on that note, I've got a little poll up. I'm curious to know what financial goal most people feel stressed about on the call. And stress could be too strong of a word. Perhaps it's just what financial goal are you focused on the most at the moment. So retirement's always a big one. College savings tends to be one of those like guilt things that parents feel like they need to be doing. And then cash savings for unexpected expenses is always, that's like the hardest one to really make progress on, it seems, because the number's always so big. All right, interesting. So it looks like it's got a few more votes trickling in, but it's pretty split. It looks like a lot of you are trying to focus on getting your cash savings higher and your retirement a little higher. And then it's, a few people looking at college savings. So this is definitely, juggling responsibilities is definitely the hardest part, and that is why financial planning exists, because there are so many different goals and limited resources. So the biggest thing I can say is always prioritize retirement savings. You have to have a plan for being able to contribute to your retirement. That is a non-negotiable. I know a lot of people want to save for college, and a few of you said that that's your, your biggest priority right now. But the thing is, we don't even know what college is going to look like. 10, 15 years from now, for those of you with young children, college might be online and free. I mean, who knows? The thing we do know is that there are loans for college. There are not loans for retirement. So retirement absolutely has to be the priority. That's very important. So for those of you who are focused on retirement and trying to figure that out, great. For those of you who might have moved on to college savings, just make sure that you're taking care of your future first. It's like on the airplanes where you're supposed to put your oxygen mask on for your child. Same thing applies for retirement and college savings. Now, regarding the keeping extra cash on hand for emergencies, this is also very important. And so I can definitely understand why half the people on the call are focused on trying to increase that number. And same thing with cash, whether it's for emergencies or just for unexpected expenses, which I like to put air quotes around unexpected, because people are always like, I don't know, it's just these unexpected expenses come up every month. To which I say, if unexpected expenses come up every month, they're not really unexpected, so perhaps you should start budgeting for them. But, you know, if you're in that situation, it might be that you need to look a little closer at your ins and outs when it comes to your cash flow, because maybe you're spending a little too much, like going to Target and spending $100 without thinking about it. A lot of people do that. But saving up cash, it's something that you have to sort of balance with the retirement savings, and ultimately the big goal would be to have at least 6 months of living expenses in a savings account somewhere you can easily access at your bank. Now, to figure out, I mean, to use the example before, if your living expenses on a monthly basis are $3,000 a month, well, 6 months of $3,000 is $18,000. And that's a lot of money to have sitting around in cash, especially when you have these unexpected expenses that come up. So I understand that, and it might take a while to get to that point. I usually tell people just set a goal of $10,000. For some reason, $10,000 feels achievable. Get to $10,000 first, and then reevaluate the goal and increase that number proportionately as needed. So, you know, maybe it's $100 a month, whatever it is. Get into the habit of doing it every single month and make sure that you're moving towards progress there. And keep a separate savings account as well to, you know, shuffle a little bit of money into for things like holiday spending or family vacations or whatever. And again, if you're having these money dates where you're talking on a regular basis with your spouse, and if you're sharing financial decisions, then it's really good, you know, whatever your budget situation is. Like, let's say you might be more likely to focus on saving, and you want to open a 529 savings plan for your kids' college education, and your partner might be like, well, I really think we need to take a family vacation because kids are only kids once, so let's do that instead. If you're sitting down and having this conversation during a money date, that's excellent, because you're both right. Those are both important things. So you can meet somewhere in the middle, right? Like perhaps if you can't afford to go to Florida this year and take the kids to Disney World, which would be great, but will definitely be expensive, then perhaps you can just do a local theme park, go to some, you know, Six Flags or something, and do a family fun day. It doesn't have to be a huge vacation with airfare, car trips across the country, and hotels and restaurants. You know, you can do something small, and the kids will still have a great time. And again, with, you know, college savings, that might be something that you're ready to start focusing on, or it could be that retirement really needs to take priority. So when it comes to deciding these things, it should absolutely be a shared decision, and you should listen to each other and appreciate the differences so that you can achieve balance together. But again, as a financial planner, the priority is retirement, and then your cash savings, and then college savings. You only get to graduate to college savings if those other two things are under control. But have these conversations during your money date with your significant other. So I know that was a lot of money talk and a lot of information, a lot of different types of information, because we've got a lot of different types of relationships, but hopefully everyone found something that they can really, you know, hold on to and enact in your life to make things a little bit simpler and a little bit more smooth. The biggest thing I could probably say really is just to not have any judgment and to talk openly and to try to listen to each other, try to come to some sort of middle ground agreement where you can both benefit and achieve balance through your differences. So this seminar will be available. We've recorded it, so we'll make this available for all of you who might have been watching without your significant other. You might want to, you know, shoot it their way via email so that they can hear this too. Or maybe you can sit down and watch it together and, again, listen to what they say, because they may not agree with everything that I've said, and their opinion counts and is interesting and valuable. So I would also like to just direct people towards the Royal Neighbor Foundation website. They have got lots of great articles and calculators and tools, you know, whether you're trying to pay down debt or figure out how much life insurance you need, whatever your family goals are at the moment, they've got a lot of great tools. You can also like them on Facebook, and that way you'll know when our next webinar is happening, which should be in September. We'll be talking about investing, which Sarah's probably going to also say. And you can also like my page on Facebook as well and stay up to date with all the different things that I'm doing, as well as these presentations with Royal Neighbors. So with that, I would just say I hope all of you have a wonderful evening. Thank you again for joining us, and I'll let Sarah take over.
Thank you, Lauren, very much. We are going to have our next webinar in September on investing. So definitely watch for an email for everyone who did attend this evening. And on behalf of the Royal Neighbors Foundation and Lauren Lyons Cole, I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy schedules to learn about love and money. Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.